Okay, so we're good. So we are good here. Yeah, so we're good. See the
Okay, so we're good. We're live. We'll do XPR meeting. We'll do like a test run. For what? Yeah, do garlic or Green does it now too. Green is the husband of technical stuff. But some people don't like the way we had him for they're a little easier and he has less he's dealing with like 5 or 6 but that's all the South Coast School Line Student Association sent order roll call approval proxy. Aye.
Aye. Fernandez. Here. Proxy DeWitt. Here. Bill.
Here.
Keel. Here. Leonard.
Here.
Lewis.
Here.
Masters.
Here.
Moriarty.
Here.
Richards.
Here.
Shaw.
Here.
Ascension.
Present.
Seekman.
Here.
Smith.
Here.
Stanek.
Here.
Stolman.
Here.
Severson.
Here.
Bostad.
Here.
Wolf.
Here.
Wright.
Present.
Yermolovich.
Here.
Alright. Everyone get a chance to look at the agenda. I recommend looking at it again. We had a couple things put up. First of all, I forgot to put David Crum in there. We have Director of Athletics David Crum coming here to present to us today, as well as there's a resolution put into the current meeting folder today that we will be taking a look at today, presented by the Constitution Committee. But other than that, any other things to look at for the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the agenda say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Agenda's approved. Moving on to approval of minutes. Did everyone get to see the meeting minutes from last meeting? Alright, there was one thing, I was going over it with Secretary Garcia today. There's just one little thing. There's just a place where the last name should have been, or first name should have been the last name. But other than that, I think everything pretty good. So with that, any other additional comments on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving last week's minutes say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Last week's minutes approved. Moving on, we have our open floor guest, Director Crum from the Athletics Department. So if you want to
Stand or
do whatever you want.
all right, I'll just stay right here. Hopefully, my name is David Crum. I'm the athletic director of Hard Rock Athletics. I see a number of student athletes in here. So I started in July of last year, so I've been here about 7 months now. So first of all, I just want to thank all of you for your service of being here, serving like you do for South Dakota Mines, and also want to thank you for your support of athletics in the past. I'm just going to give you a little brief update about who I am, where I'm from, and I'll also kind of talk through kind of my vision and what we're trying to accomplish in the Department of Athletics. So I'm a North Dakota native. I grew up just 3 hours north of here in Henninger, North Dakota, and went to high school in Grand Forks. But then spent about 30 years in college athletics in a number of different schools from Iowa State, Minnesota, and then spent the last 10 years at Colorado State. Briefly was in fundraising for UC Health and a healthcare facility in northern Colorado. But throughout my 30 years in college athletics, I spent the vast majority in the fundraising area in a number of schools that I mentioned. So my goal, my vision for athletics is what I want Hard Rock Athletics to be a point of pride for South Dakota Mines, current students, future students, as well as our alumni and letter winners that have all walked through and on this campus. So in the end, what's the purpose of athletics is to serve as a point of pride for this university. And for us, student athletes, our motto for student athletes is student athletes first and foremost. We've got probably 40 staff members up there, and I've visited with them about our job every day is to make sure that we provide our student athletes with world-class education, world-class athletic experience, and as well as I see college athletics when they come in for 4 or 5 years, honestly, to be probably one of the best professional development seminars you can ever go through. Now, it's a 4 or 5 year process, but in terms of how you're doing time management, conflict resolution, interpersonal skills, being competitive, our student athletes, our scholar athletes, that 4 years, they're coming in as young men and women and are going to leave that as professionals and prepared for the rest of their lives, and we want to make sure that we put them through the learning process as student athletes, both in the classroom as well as in their area of competition, to be ready for the rest of their life. That's the important part, is that when they leave, they're prepared to be successful alumni and successful human beings moving forward. So that's critical for what we're doing. My job as an athletic director is to provide the resources, from facilities to travel to nutrition to their areas in which they practice and compete in. We want to make sure that right now we're probably not in the top half of the metrics of the RMAC conference, and that's the Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference. That's what we compete with. There's 14 other schools there, and there's probably a dozen different metrics, from financial aid support to recruiting to how we're budgeting, and we're not in the top half right now. And my goal and dream is to put us in the top half, to give the resources available for our student athletes to be successful against the other student athletes that they're competing against in their areas in their sports. So that's critical for me, is providing resources through driving revenue, through support, through alumni, through fundraising, through ticket revenue, through corporate sponsorships, as well as university support. And you guys are a part of that, so I thank you for that support as we move forward. A lot of the funds we use from the finance that we provide you is, as you all probably know, about a year and a half ago we had a bus incident. So this last year we've contracted with Rushmore Tours, which is a first-class organization, and so our buses are second to none within the conference. And I think the student athletes can attest to the improved transportation that we've provided them this year for our programs, and that's their safety is utmost in what we do. We have that motto of student athletes first and foremost. When I look through kind of the breakdown of what we're doing for the student athletes, like I said, it's their academics is the most important thing. And Division II, our motto is a balanced life. And for us, making sure when they come to a school like South Dakota Mines, academic excellence is the first thing that's the most important for them to be, is academically successful. Then we also want to make sure they're athletic excellence is another pillar of what we're standing for, making sure we're providing them the opportunity to compete. Student athlete development and experience, from mental health to providing them tutors or help with their studies, to resume building, to providing them resources how to interview. We want to make sure that we have a life skills development of our student athletes before they leave. That's a program that's hasn't been fully developed yet, but one of our goals is to make sure that we really beef up our student development and life skills program that we have for our student athletes. Another part is the fiscal responsibility. Money matters when it comes to athletics departments. The resources matter, what we can provide our student athletes. It's my job to make sure we manage and we're fiscally responsible on the fiduciary side of all the money that comes in. We're responsible for it. As I tell our staff, is we need to use this money, treat this money like it's your own. We need to make sure that we're spending it wisely and managing it even wisely as well. And we have to really also, on the resource side, work hard in terms of telling our story and what we're doing with our student athletes, so people can support us through corporate sponsorships, private giving, attending our games as well. So, and then engagement. Engagement is critical for us with the community, with this university, to come to our events. I always tell people the most important things, what separates college athletics from professional athletics, there's two main things. It's the band, and we have an amazing band. They said we have the best band in the conference, and it's the student section. You don't see those type of energy and excitement at professional competitions that you do in college, and we really want to make sure we emphasize that we put the resources to make sure the band is there, and we need to do a little bit better work on the marketing promotions and drawing our students to attend our games that we have for football, men's, women's basketball, and volleyball primarily, and soccer. Any place where there's bleachers, we want to make sure we have a good crowd of students there cheering on their fellow students. The engagement with campus, with community, within all the alumni base throughout the world, we want to make sure we're properly engaged with them as well. So I'll open it up to questions. That's kind of who I am, what I am. So
Yes. And I'll limit this question, those questions actually 5 minutes, so we'll start at 5:17. Yes, Senator Wright.
With South Dakota being one of the main states where state funds can be allocated to tuition, what are the main sources of fundraising that you acquire? And my second question would be, historically, student athletes on the school-line campus is usually 10%. Do you have a number of how many student athletes you have right now? And does anybody know the current student enrollment?
my understanding is we have about 308 student athletes, and you guys are probably a lot better at math than I am. I think our enrollment is sitting at around 2,500. So I think we're between 10 and 15% of our student body is our student athletes. So, and yes, we're probably the only state in the United States that doesn't allow state funding for scholarships. So our main priority when we're raising money from our alumni, season ticket holders, that's kind of where the main sources of income come from, is former student athletes as well as community members that want to support us. Our greatest need is scholarship first and foremost, and then after that it's all the operational expenses that go into making sure we run great programs in all 13 of our stores.
Thank you.
Senator Lewis.
So I have a long-term goal question, but it's just out of pure curiosity. I'm a grad student, and every year that I've been here, I've heard small talk but never progress about being able to potentially bring soccer into our football stadium, which I know would require upsizing the size of the field. And I've heard talk about stadium renovations, but never anything brought to fruition. Is there a long-term goal to talk about remodeling the stadium to allow soccer to be here at any point?
Right now, I think that the biggest challenge with soccer is we have a track around it, and not having the track and soccer together, there's some space constraints there in terms of having a regulation track right now. Soccer does utilize it in the spring, but right now we are starting to look at some plans to renovate the track facility, but there's no plans in terms of bringing soccer there. We would like to find a better location than Dakota Fields because it's too far away. This spring we may actually play out of Omaha. There's a soccer field over there to bring it closer to campus. That's definitely one of our priorities, is to try to figure out how we can improve their home pitch, as they call it, right, Night Watcher? So that's, we want to improve that, but I'm not sure if the stadium itself is the long-term goal that we're looking for.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Director Crum? Vice President Lee.
So you talked about a lot about engaging students, non-athletic students, in games, engaging with community. Where's some action steps you can do that?
Right now, it's an area we need to improve upon. We have a marketing and promotions position that's frozen. But just recently I went out to visit 2 different fraternities. Then we had them back in for a halftime shooting contest with all the fraternities. We want to do more things like that, especially with the students. We need to figure out a way, not only this generation, but every generation. Nobody's usually going to events by themselves. So when we go out to promote, to try to bring our student body in, we've got to do a better job of grabbing from student organizations to dorm floors to fraternities, sororities. We've got to get collectively to find people to bring them as groups to our events. We're not going to go try to do it, hey, you come to one more game, you come to one more game. People are going to come. It's a social event that they're coming to. So our strategy is to figure out ways to get groups of students to come. And then we have to make it exciting, not only basically from driveway to driveway, from dorm room back to dorm room. That's a good experience for them. And when they're there, there's entertainment outside, over and above, from halftime to halftime. We got to start throwing out T-shirts. We've got to do more stuff to engage them in the overall entertainment of the event.
Senator Bostad.
You mentioned corporate sponsorships. Talk to me about how you plan to implement more corporate sponsorships and what the process of that is.
You know, obviously it's a identification and then engagement with those folks and then telling those organizations. We just gotta have boots on the ground, quite honestly. We've gotta be out, we have to go out, myself especially, go out and speak to civic organizations. We want them to come back and give back to South Dakota Mines and Hard Rock for athletics. We've got to be going to where they're at. We can't invite them always and expect them always to come to us and us not to go to them. So we need to be out there knocking on doors, speaking to civic organizations wherever there's public appearances, opportunities. Our student athletes do a great job with community engagement and doing community hours. That's a step. We've got one staff member that's fundraising as well as corporate sponsorship. We need them out asking people to support and then tell our story and have great corporate packages that give them visibility at our events. We need to draw more people to our events, so the value of them advertising and having sponsorships at our event is better in their eyes. So we've got to do that side of it as well. And it's word of mouth. It's word of mouth in terms of this corporation. Who else do they know in the business community that they want to talk to us? So whenever we go out and visiting with people, one of our standard questions is there anybody that you think we should be visiting with or would like to visit from us or would maybe be interested in supporting our student athletes?
All right, this will be the last question. Vice President Lee.
Grubby's logos potentially changing, I heard, in the next couple of days.
Yeah.
Is that going to affect anything in athletics in terms of like the branding?
Well, I've seen the life from, I think it's 63 years old, 73 years old. He's lost his whiskey bottle and his gun. So I'm not sure we're probably moving in the right direction, but that's the only biggest change I see is I think he may be lacking ammunition on his hip, but I think the Grubby's just going to be modernized a little bit. I think people aren't really going to notice a big difference. It's just going to be cleaned up a little bit. Grubby's uniquely ours, and we love it. I think they do a great job. Our mascot team, our cheer squad team does a great job. But honestly, my wife is always after me about, I'm not sure if it's you or whoever's doing the social media for Grubby is kicking athletics butt in terms of their social media. And she tells me I better go find whoever's doing Grubby social media. I need to hire them away because they're doing a great job with their social media. So we're big fans of Grubby.
All right, with that, I think that's our time for questions. So thank you for coming in, Director.
Great, thank you.
All right, moving on. We have no business, but we do have one piece of new business. So just go ahead up there.
Archer Lee, resolution number 25, S0012. From the amendment for the 19th of February 2025, originated by Constitution Committee, presented by myself, whereas Graduate Women in Science, ULIS, has requested to be activated, and whereas the following organization have changed leadership and has reapplied to be recognized organization through Rocker Central, and therefore be resolved by a majority vote of the Student Senate and the signature of the Student Association President that the Constitution for the Graduate Women in Science, ULIS, be reactivated, allowing for formal recognition.
Is there any time importance on this?
No, I was gonna present it next week because I was talking to Court. You know, I forgot. I dropped the ball. I won't lie. That's what I did. But I reached out to them and I told them that we were going to present this next week anyway. And I told them it'd be about a 2-week process of us doing that. So there's no time constraint. It was just something that I wanted to make sure that got brought up, that I addressed. I just put the date for the another one because I didn't want to forget to do it. So I did that and then it just got on the agenda. So.
All right. Senator Hernandez.
Do we know how long they have been inactive? Because they applied for service, if I'm not wrong.
Not that. It hasn't. I'm breaking the rules, sorry. Not that long. I think it just wasn't reactivated this fall. I think they were still active last year.
All right. Vice President Lee.
Can I friendly amend that for graduate women in science?
Yeah. Yeah, you can. That's fine.
Senator Boucher?
Do you know how many people are interested in that? Like how many members, potential members are?
So to be reactivated, Rock, so she had to have 10, so I'm assuming that's 10. I mean, that's usually what it is, so that's why I assume it's at least 10. Problem with it is that the person who started it originally, they came to Constitution, it was like 2 years ago. They came up and she started it, and then it seemed like it was something that was kind of, dying off kind of thing with her class. But it looks like it's something that they're trying to reinstate for that. And essentially, since we have wide and things like that, I think it'll be more prominent on campus.
All right. Senator Fernandez?
I have a question for Senator Lockwood or CFO Lockwood. Are they still eligible for SOAP since they apparently not?
Well, if they're getting reactivated currently
Point of order.
Sorry.
CFO Lockwood.
Okay. So if they're getting reactivated currently for the next fiscal year, so for FY26 they are eligible for SOAP, and for the Graduate Women in Science, which is specifically answering that question, just to give clarification, because that was on the list of approved organizations that semester that was checked through student engagement, they should be approved for that process, and I'm assuming that the reactivation was because of this semester specifically.
Senator Lewis?
We can also just choose to turn a blind eye and be like decent people and just give them the funding that they ask for, as long as they're not breaking, some like funding rules. So if they were still operating as a legal club either way, and it was just a paperwork error, I see no reason to deny the funding.
Senator Edgar?
And yeah, just to clarify, I mean, I know it's been back and forth, but they've been waiting since the fall semester, so I think once we've got all this piece done, you should be okay.
With that, I do not see any more comments or questions on the floor, therefore we will see this next week. All right, moving on to open discussion. I did want to bring one open discussion to this week's meeting, kind of more of a question that I want to kind of discuss. I'll let a discussion on this kind of topic to 10 minutes, so we'll stop at 5:35 on this discussion, but this is something I've been thinking about a lot, I've been having a lot of conversations about, and the kind of question kind of formulated out of it was, what does everyone think the purpose of Senate is? Why do you think you are here? I want to propose that question. Why are you here as a senator in this body? Senator Alvarado.
I joined Senate because I didn't see student athletic representation on Senate when I joined. There was a lot of track people on that, obviously, I correct myself, but I didn't see anybody from football who was in it, and I decided that I wanted to be a voice of my peers.
Senator Wright.
Are you asking why we individually decided to join Senate, or what our take on the purpose of the Student Senate is?
I think I'm going more for that latter point of what is Senate's purpose in 2025? Senator Keel.
Can we have a hint?
This is more of an open-ended question.
That's not what I mean.
Senator Keel.
Is when Student Senate was created in the 1920s or whatever, what was the purpose?
So, I think that over the years, and I'll bring this back to me, I had a discussion about this with Director Headley today, and I think over the years, the purpose of Student Senate has changed from what it was in the 1920s to what it was probably in the 1970s to what it was 12 years ago to what it is today. I personally think that Senate today serves two main purposes. I think the first main purpose is to allocate funds to certain organizations through the use of SOAP. And I think the second purpose is to advocate, is to talk to our students body, our constituent body that we represent, and then take that representation and take the feedback we get from our constituents and take them to the proper people on issues that they bring up to us, such as dining to the dining director, housing to the housing director, state issues to lobby in the legislature, administration issues to President Taney. And so that's what I feel like the purpose of Senate is. That's why I joined Senate in the first place, was to be a representative and to speak for my students. And also, I just love government. So, Senator Boston.
Do you think that the Senate purpose or mission, or I guess vision, should come from the executive team of the Senate, or should it come from the administration of the collective group of the senators? Who should be leading that vision and purpose?
I think first people who should be leading that vision and purpose, I think the initial vision and purpose should be kind of thought of and presented by the executive team. And I think it is then the Senate's purpose to not only provide feedback on that vision, but also execute that vision that we all collectively eventually come to an agreement on. CFO Lockwood, I see you had your hand up. I know you have some things you want to talk about.
I'll let you continue talking.
Okay.
If that's the stuff you want to say for your report or not, of why this is even up for discussion.
Any other comments on this question before? Yes, Senator Wolf.
I think similar kind of what you're saying, but I think it's very important that we have kind of oversight as a student senate, because there's a lot of cases, I think, where different departments on campus or like food services or anything like that, there's going to be a lot of complaints from students, and maybe we get that feedback, which is important, but I think it's important to kind of have that governmental function of being a respected sounding board that can go to those people and kind of hold them accountable. And that's one of the reasons I joined, is to kind of have a voice in that accountability for different groups on campus, especially being like a student athletic voice in that. And it's just a much better way to have our student voice heard than a bunch of griping people all the time, because we can kind of coalesce that voice into something productive instead of just complaining, which I think is a big purpose.
Okay. Senator Seaton.
Kind of pinging off of other comments I've heard, I worked in the admissions office, and so when I give tours to prospective students, I highlight Senate. One, because I'm selfish and think we're cool. Two, because I do think we are really important. What I always say is that we are student council, but with actual power. We have the unique ability and the unique privilege to serve as the voice of students to upper admin. They come to us because they want to know what students think, and we are elected and choose to be representatives of that voice. And I think that's a really cool experience that we are all very lucky and privileged to have.
Senator Richards.
It's kind of an opinion, but I think people often speak on behalf of students rather than people often speak for students rather than on behalf of students, which is an important distinction that I think people need to think about more, and make sure you're speaking on behalf of students, not just what you think their opinion is, what their opinion actually is.
Yeah, and that's another point I think I want to bring up later in my report too. So, yeah, Director Headley.
I would quickly just add, when you're thinking about it, is what do you feel the student body here at South Dakota Mines views the role of student association, and are you fulfilling that role? Because as I just shared with the leadership team this afternoon, Senate's changed considerably over the 12 years that I've been here. Students are different than they were 12 years ago. Issues were different 12 years ago, right? So what are the issues that students are doing now, so that you just make sure that you're fulfilling those? So those are just questions. I mean, I think they do that with my staff in my office. Like, what is our role now as opposed to what it was 12 years ago? And are we meeting the things that we should be doing now? And what programs are we doing now that we didn't do 12 years ago? So it's just that constant improvement, right? To make sure that we're doing what your fellow students elected you to do.
All right. Any other comments on this topic? Seeing none, CFO Lockwood, I know we had a bit of discussion about this too, if you'd like to bring that up now.
All right, but is it specifically related to the topics that happened on Monday with the survey that I just voiced frustrations with?
You can, yeah, I think this has to
About
do.
the purposes. Okay, I'll bring this situation up because of the meeting that we held last Monday and my personal anger and frustrations with what happened within Senate recently with the surveys that have been being sent out in regards to the House bills that are being put on the floor in the South Dakota State Legislature. So my particular issues with these surveys is that we did not have the information fully in them. So the whole meeting itself is a gigantic waste of time because we just abstained on Senate, and on a political perspective, if you are having Student Federation here say something that's we're personally against this bill, and then we just personally abstain on it, based on the rules of Student Federation, they cannot take a position on it. So, and recently that House bill that was 1193, that was in contention and discussion within the Senate recently on Monday, Student Senate on Monday, failed. So on a political level, the Senate basically abstained on something that was destined to fail, which is not a great thing. It's also because the majority of the student body voted yes on this bill that we took an abstain position, so we went against that direction of the student body, which I find particularly important on a position that you would have on a ballot initiative, because we're treating this as a ballot initiative of like, please give your opinion on the survey of what the position the Senate should take. So that's pretty straight to the point of like, no, Senate should take a yes position instead of abstaining and then having to get negative opinions from not only Federation, but then having a failure on a massive scale. Moreover, I think that while the surveys are being sent out in good faith, it isn't really necessarily the position of students to have to give their opinions on this. We are elected as representatives or appointed by people who were elected, and we should be giving a decisive position on what we want as a student body. And I think sending out surveys and then just abstaining on the positions is showing that Senate is being indecisive recently, which I have a tremendous problem with. Otherwise, there's a lot of reforms that can be made in the future with like the Constitution that we discussed earlier with E-Board, and what like a view would be for Senate in the future if that is desired. And like what Senator Wolf brought up, which was important, and what I kind of want more advancing in the future is more oversight and how you can do oversight within the Senate and what the assignments within individual committees can be fulfilled or not. But otherwise, that was my main issue and why the question of like what is the role of a senator was going to be asked.
Any comments on this issue in particular? Senator Richards.
You know, many political issues are fairly split 50-50. How much of a margin do you need to not abstain and actually have an opinion on something?
Senator Leonard.
I don't feel comfortable as a senator if my constituents are at least 60% agreed on something to take a position on it.
I think that as a
CFO Lockwood.
I think as a representative or a senator, you would be taking those positions. It's like when House of Representatives on like a grander scale, just outside of Senate, take a position on something. They're not directly like sending out surveys to their constituents. I mean, that isn't like an democratic thing of like, we're not taking that into account. That's just the role that you were elected. You were entrusted by students to take a position on this particular issue.
Any other comments? Senator Lewis.
I'm curious what your end goal is with looking for opinions from senators, because this sounds like an equal discussion to me with actually like how Senate is run through its constitution.
Yes. So I wanted to bring this conversation to Senate because I feel like we have discussed this in the board before, and I wanted to get opinions from everyone in the Senate and kind of express my own frustrations as well, because I feel like that to CFO Lockwood's point, we are a representative body. We are supposed to be talking to our constituents and taking their opinions and formulating decisions based on those opinions. We shouldn't be messengers we should be more than just messengers, I guess I should say, for our student body. And I feel like that we're almost, I don't want to say we're failing in that position, but I feel like we could be doing better in that position. Senator Lewis.
While I don't disagree with what you're saying, I believe in order for us to appropriately air grievances and have an existential discussion about Senate, it should not be during an official minutes recorded meeting, and it should be when we dissolve into executive session to have open discussion. Just like how the Board of Regents would do it, or how Student Federation would do it.
Point noted. Any other comments on this issue? Senator Stallman?
Request for personal privilege.
Okay. Thank you.
I think it was good that the point was brought up. To benefit all the senators to think about the subject.
Yes. And CFO Walker.
I do respect your point, Senator Lewis, especially like I brought this up in previous e-board meetings, and I just wanted to air out my grievances to the senators, not in granted I did get heated because, as you say, sometimes not in person. It was more so to be transparent and not have like frustrations be behind closed doors, but to be active and representative, like what senators can take a position on, like what your role as senator should be. How did you feel about the meetings that have been going on in special sessions, and just be open and honest with the student body about how I felt as CFO during these meetings.
Any other points on this discussion? Senator Wright.
Are there any plans in place or future plans to fix these grievances or address these grievances?
I'll mark on myself. Yes, there are plans. I will go into that in the president's report. Mainly about directing a lot of action that we have been currently taking in Senate, such as through our class senator reports. That's mainly where it revolves around. Just organizing that more and providing action on those reports instead of just talking about it in our body. Senator Gosto.
I'm just wondering why these grievances, various in number, weren't brought up during the actual special sessions, or if they're brought up in e-board, why weren't they passed down to committees so they can pass them down to the senators instead of grievances or mishaps being talked about in the general session? We'd be talking about solutions or proposals for resolutions to solve these problems.
So I believe that this was brought up in this session because it is an issue that needs to be addressed to all the senators, and it is an issue that has been brought up in e-board multiple times. It has been disseminated. I feel like it is appropriate to have this conversation now with senators because I feel like we need to establish a purpose for ourselves and a plan going forward as a Senate, and a plan going forward to make sure that this organization isn't something that just has presidents and vice presidents elected every year just to serve on a body, and that we actually have a purpose as a body to represent our students effectively. CFO Lockwood.
To directly address Senator Bostad's question of why that was not brought up in the special sessions, that the special session was just specifically in regards to making a position on HB 1193, and wasn't really necessary to open discussion in regards to the feelings that after that meeting happened. So the reason why this was brought up during this meeting, during open discussion, was specifically in regards to how people felt and voiced to me specifically after that meeting, rather than just like within the meeting where that original purpose was just specifically directed at taking a position on a House bill.
Senator Richards.
It's been very productive. That being said, I believe we're well over the time. So.
Okay. Is that a motion to limit discussion?
Yes.
All right. Motion to limit discussion. Second by Senator Hill. All those in favor of limiting discussion say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Discussion is limited. All right. Any other points of general open discussion? Vice President Lee.
I have a question for Senator Richards. I think last week we talked about you wanted more information on the future of the shop management kind of whole ordeal. Did you have a chance to talk to Dr. Larson on that?
Senator Richards.
I have talked to him a little bit, not as much as I would have liked. It's been a crazy week, but he seemed a little bit unsure. He told me there are plans being made by other people in the department, but he didn't have a great answer for me at the time. So.
Could you say that louder? I couldn't hear you over here.
Yeah, he didn't have a straight, clear answer for me. He said there were plans to be made by other people in the department that he'll hear more in the future, but I didn't get an exact answer. So.
Senator Wolf.
Senator Richards, did he tell you who those other people making the plans might be, and if you could talk to them?
I believe part of that is through camp and codes and stuff. Camp's still planning on having a little bit of a mentor program taking over in some aspects of that, but there's still a little bit of an unfilled role there that I'm not quite sure about. So.
Point of clarification, can you repeat that, please?
Camp is, if this continues, is planning on introducing its own mentors, but those would be just for camp use, so it wouldn't necessarily solve the problem of any department shop mentors or funding for them necessarily. So I'll ask again later this semester, and hopefully I'll have more of an answer.
Any other questions on this, comments, concerns on this point of discussion? Seeing none, any other points of discussion? Senator Seaman?
Sorry, I would love to give a student federation report as we were just on that topic. As you know from the special session, our student senate took a motion to abstain, which therefore meant that we could not support Student Federation's bill to oppose. When Student Federation met this weekend, we made that position clear that if Student Federation was to take a vote on that resolution, we could not support, and we explained our reasoning as detailed in the special session. Furthermore, other schools expressed similar reluctance to take a vote on that resolution at that time, as they wanted to collect more information from their student body. So a vote on the resolution was not taken at that moment in time, and the plan was to reconvene as needed if the bill passed the House. It did not pass the House, and it is now dead. So, just an update for everybody so we're all on the same page.
Any comments, questions, concerns concerning your statement? Seeing none, any other points of open discussion? Seeing none, we'll move on to our CFO report.
Alright, I'll be calm for this report. Alright, so I met with Vice President Lee last Friday, and we discussed the Senate budget, and so we have a draft currently, and we'll discuss more with that budget proposal with eBoard and other members of Finance Committee. I went to GAPAC training on Thursday. Other members who were on the GAPAC committee either got training on Thursday and Friday, and future plans for GAPAC are being planned out by Shelley. She's kind of having difficulty planning the schedules because all of it's so complicated, but there are plans for GAPAC meetings, and for finance meetings, there is a plan for finance committee immediately after this session, and possibly on Thursday. Otherwise, there is nothing else to report.
Any comments, questions, concerns? Yes, Senator Richards.
Do we have a rough timeline on when organizations will be hearing about their sub allocations?
So
CFO Lockwood.
Before, yes, it'll be, well, as like what you just said to me before May, but like obviously like you have like the planned out process of like how the amount that finance committee decides to allocate, and that would be going to GAPAC because then it's like approved through GAPAC, so GAPAC's through by me for sure.
Any other comments, questions, concerns for your CFO Lockwood? Seeing none, moving on to our Vice President report.
Good evening. Hope you all are staying warm and staying healthy, unlike me this past weekend. But I also had the opportunity to go to the GAPAC kind of orientation meetings that went well. Work with CFO Lockwood on the Senate budget. I just want to give you some rough numbers right now. We're thinking about taking a couple hundred off of each of the salaries for this coming we've allocated kind of the normal amount for shed. And we've also not allocated anything for Student Federation travel. So we'll see, I'll be in discussion with our committee chairs on their thoughts on that, but that's kind of the general strategy. That brings us to around 16 grand, which is, for reference, we're about 20 grand was our ask last year. So those are some rough numbers just to kind of prep you for when we actually see the budget. Any report?
Any comments, questions, concerns for Vice President Week? Seeing none, moving on to my report. So, like I said, no discussion. I was going to elaborate on some solutions I found and just some general reason why I brought this up. So yeah, I mean, I feel like that as us as a student body are representatives for our constituents, being the students, and that means that you know, I have in my notes, we are representatives, not necessarily just messengers. And that means that we take the information that we are privy to, as well as the voices of our students and what they want and what they desire, and we combine those into something basically an opinion that makes a decision on something that does affect the student body. And so that's why I brought up the point, because I feel like that's what our primary purpose is as senators, and I feel like we're almost relying too much on pure student voice and not taking into account some of the information we're given to by especially our administration. And with that, I kind of wanted to bring some solutions I and the executive committee have formulated to you know, mitigate these issues almost. First of all, I think something I want to do this semester, and I want your feedback on this because you know, this is kind of a pretty big change. I want to start creating class committees. So each week or bi-weekly, depending on how much we see fit to meet, I want these class committees to meet. So you do your freshman class committee, sophomore, junior, senior class committees. You notice today, I believe there are only two or three people I don't have added on Snapchat in this room. I added you to a group chat with your class in it. So I intend on using that to kind of help facilitate this transition. But I do want your opinion on this once I am done with my report. It's like that's the big thing. I want to kind of form these class committees so we have a better unified voice into when we come into giving our class reports in the Senate, so we have better understanding what the issues are. Secondly, on those class committees and class reports, to ascertain the information for those committees, I would like to work with possibly our Student Affairs Committee to create almost a question sheet instead of just leaving it open-ended, like how's school going, instead of, you know, what's your life on campus, what's your life with student organizations like, what's your life in residence life like, what are your academics like, questions like these, so we can, you know, ask students better pointed questions so we get a better understanding of what they're going through and who we need to go talk to in order to better represent them and solve their issues on campus. Another thing too with those student issues is I want to start creating appropriate ad hocs for the issues that have been brought up. One issue that's been brought up is dining. We already have an appropriate ad hoc from, which is the dining services. Another ad hoc I want to create is a housing. We had a housing committee a couple years ago, or actually just a year ago, that was dissolved because the chair of that committee felt that purpose was made. However, I feel like as students, there are still issues that are brought up to our body constantly about housing. So I do want to see what the feel of creating a housing committee that can go talk to the housing director would be, instead of just having the housing director come in and present once. I think that should be a constant dialogue that we upkeep. And another final thing is just organizing voices to admin, and that would mainly be a role that would fall on myself and the vice president. So, yeah, those are kind of like those are all the solutions I wanted to present. Other part of my report was just going to be that House Bill 1193 failed in the House on Tuesday, but other than that, that is the end of my report. So I open it up now to kind of opinions on the creation of these class committees and like what purpose people think they should serve. Yes, Aiden, or Senator Tyson.
So since the class reports are bi-weekly, will the committee meetings also be bi-weekly, or are they going to be weekly?
What I will apply to you with another question. What do you think would be more beneficial? Senator Syverson.
I believe that it should be bi-weekly before the class report of that respective.
Okay. Senator Smith.
Since assuming these committees won't have chairs, how will the meetings be organized? Is it just like kind of a collective decision?
So I feel like that it'd be appropriate for each committee to choose their own leader to kind of serve as a reporter for that week. Whether that be just choose someone to report to Student Senate that week, or you choose a chair that you constantly use as a reporter for each week, or each week, I guess. Senator Smith.
So then the reporter for that class would not change if the committee deemed that's okay. Like,
Again, question back at you. Do you think it should change? Senator Smith.
I believe it should change since we are all representatives and representing our own people. I think we should each have the opportunity to speak, and if there's just one person doing it, each opportunity that takes away from one person's voice or another interpretation of that.
Are there any other questions on the floor? Are there any other questions on the floor? Yes, CFO Lockwood.
Because this is in regards to committees and this involves a constitutional change, anyone on Constitution Committee, is there an opinion that you have that this would affect the Constitution, or would this just be an extra addition?
Senator Alvarado.
In our goals to change how we're just organizing, kind of how we want to do class reports, things like that. That's what, am I understanding that's the goal of this?
Yes, so I think the goal of it right now is temporarily I would like to create ad hocs for this administration, but moving forward to approve Constitution into the next administration for these class committees to be permanent committees. Senator Alvarado.
If you're going to move it to a Constitution thing and it's not ad hoc, that's going to be allocated every year, then I believe that would be a Constitution change, because that's something that you want to include continuously. Ad hocs right now are currently decided by the president, vice president yearly, and they're kind of just decided by us. Usually the president and vice president ask us for our opinions on if they should exist, and if we decide that that's something that we want to continue, that's a Constitution change.
Perfect. Any other comment? Senator Bostad.
Forgive me if I'm wrong, but this not fall under student affairs, gauging the inputs from the different classes, or is that just a far off ball that I'm doing?
Senator Alvarado.
I think, Senator Bostad, I think the goal is to, if we're trying to change the image of what we're looking at, it's trying to use the senators as a voice for them and not trying to get, what it sounds like what we're trying to do, correct me if I'm wrong, is we're trying to make it so that senators are being the voice of their communities, and in that sense it would be a senator range thing.
Senator Lewis.
What if it were a restructuring of the Student Affairs Committee to simply include that? That way you don't have multiple Student Affairs Committees in classes and a Student Affairs Committee. What if they were one and the same, just restructured?
That could be an idea. Yes. Senator Bostad.
Would that still take Constitution overhaul, or would that just be student affairs?
It would take Constitution overhaul, since we would be restructuring the duties of Student Affairs Committee. Senator Wilson.
I'm curious how you think we should go about doing that. I'm just wondering, have one senator from each class on the Student Affairs Committee, or what do you think?
Senator Lewis.
Potentially, if the end goal is to have multiple students, then we could also make a constitution modification to enlarge the Student Affairs Committee. I think it would be a brainstorming session. It was just a spitballing idea.
With this, this seems more of a conversation now appropriate for Constitution Committee. So I'm going to limit discussion on this. And I guess with that, I guess I'll just post it. Yes, I'm going to limit. Yes, any other questions for my report? Senator Wright.
Parking committee is already an ad hoc committee, correct?
Correct. Or, let me clarify on that. Do you mean parking appeals or do you mean parking improvements? Senator Wright.
You're kind of answering my question. So parking, not just parking appeals. So pretty much I'll just get to my point. In the past, Director Helling, please correct me if I'm wrong or please provide some insight. Student Senate has entertained one of the student body's main concerns, which is parking, and we looked at a possible parking garage, but that idea was ultimately shot down because it wouldn't cost too much money to have the parking garage up to code. Director Helling, do you know any information of this?
Director Helling.
Yeah, and I guess I'll be first having Geraldine come in and speak to it publicly, but the cost of building it and maintaining the spots is astronomical right now, right? And so, not that it wouldn't be in the future, but where we were in the budget piece, it just was not feasible at that time. In the future, maybe. And I would say the other thing that she does get feedback, and I think Senate might have voted on it, where we're at with how parking is allocated right now with the addition of the different colors that we've had in the past. That was kind of a student input at that perspective of how do we get the right amount of parking for each different section. And in 12 years, I think it's gone back and forth between multiple colors to 4 colors to multiple colors to 4 colors, depending on what we need. So it could be, in a short answer for the parking garage, is just maybe inviting her, where are we at now, and is there a place for it in the master plan, for example?
All right. Senator Hernandez.
I do have a question. Do we know with all the open area that we have for parking right now, what is the total number of parking spots we have?
Director Adley.
Oh, sorry, I wasn't raising my hand.
Oh, Senator Lewis.
We're currently in a session of asking the president report questions, and we had a motion to limit discussion on this.
All right. Motion to limit discussion by Senator Lewis. Senator Syverson, second. Motion all in favor of limiting discussion, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Discussion is limited. All right. Any other comments, questions, concerns from my report? Seeing none, moving on to our freshman report. Senator Ronald, take it away.
Okay, so the two major things this time. So freshman classes enjoy the green clutter apparently. So this is the main thing that both complaints were about. So the main thing about that is the IC walkways, and nothing has been done about that. And the second major thing is still the maintenance of restrooms in the Peterson Hall. The major thing that was noted about that is the awful smell that has not been fixed in like last month probably. Like this is the only problem that the class probably has.
Alright, are you good? Your report?
Yeah, the report. Yeah.
Alright, so, now question.